Welcome to Cybersecurity Vault. I'm your host, Matthew Rosenquist, CISO, industry cybersecurity strategist and advisor. And today we are going to talk about, different aspects and strategic ramifications of the SEC case against SolarWinds and their CISO. And we're going to look at this from various viewpoints, so get ready. And I'm going to be talking with Ed Amoroso. Ed is the founder and CEO of Tagging Infosphere. He's an author, research professor at New York University, and a highly respected, long-standing member of the cybersecurity community. He's been around forever. Not to say that you're old, Ed. Not to say that you're old.
That's okay. I think that's the right adjective.
Okay, good. I don't want to offend you this early, right? So, and thank you for joining and weighing in and providing some perspectives on this. It's been a controversial kind of case, don't you think?
I do think so. Yeah, there's a lot of different perspectives here. I think everybody has the same end goal. We'd like to see our infrastructure more secure, like to see businesses more secure. So we're all paddling in the same direction. There's a lot of different paths there, and there's different opinions about the right way to get there. I hope eventually we reach a common goal, but right now I think there's a little bit of confusion about the best way to proceed.
I think you're understanding. I think there's a lot of confusion, right? I mean, just in our world, normally there's a tremendous amount of ambiguity and chaos that causes confusion. And then we start getting some of the regulators coming in, right, in the SEC. Right. And this particular complaint against SolarWinds and their CISO, right, it's a 68-page complaint, very, very articulate in that. And they're calling out, okay, fraud has occurred, and this is what we're going down the path. And when we're talking about fraud in the SEC context, right, it's about knowingly misrepresenting or attesting to something. Specifically on SEC forms that go to shareholders or stockholders or people that are looking to invest. What's your read overall for this case? Where do you see the direction and their intent on this, do you think?
I think you hopefully you'd agree that the first thing you want to do is factor out things that don't have a lot to do with, say, the CISO position or industry, like if there was stock bought or sold, stuff like that. Those are kind of separate. Like that's not really a cyber thing so much as very specific to the case. So in my mind, it's more about kind of the SEC's points that they're trying to make and the kinds of things that they've been pushing with their recent ruling. Around the 4-day reporting,
which just went active yesterday.
Right.
I heard a lot of tears hitting buckets out there. Yesterday.
What are you gonna do? But I think I wanted to ask you because I have a lot of respect for you, and you and I, in some sense, came out slightly different positions on this. Here's what I wanted to ask you. Like, okay. I think, and I'm not the greatest investor in the world. I can barely balance a checkbook. I'm pretty good with networks, but terrible with money. But I think the idea here, if I'm getting it right, is that if you and I were lawyers at the SEC, we're there to protect investors. That's why we get up every day. And you and I are glad they do that. I'm for that.
Yeah.
And the idea is
that's our tax money, by the way. So we better be glad about that.
Here's what I think they have in their mind. Let's say you have Acme Industries over here and Consolidated Manufacturing over there.
Okay.
Similar companies. And you and I might decide to invest in one or the other, both public companies. They do something similar. And we would ingest information from the internet, from whatever, from our advisors to decide whether I'm going to buy stock in this guy or that guy.
Yes.
Then let's say that Acme has a cyber breach that they don't tell me about. Sure. And then I decide, I buy their stock and it goes down, but I could have bought the other guy. And if I had known that they had this breach, then I'd go, hold on a second here. I'm not going to buy from them because they have a breach. If they had just told me, then I would have bought this other thing. I'd have made money. And hey, SEC, I'm mad. Make sure that they tell me in the future. That way I have more information and I'm likely to buy the stock that's going to go up more. Is that, I just want to make sure I'm sort of boiling it down.
Yeah. So
is that sort of the basic, like the lawyers, they're probably thinking that. Do I have that right?
Yeah, let's take a step back and go, okay, well, why was the SEC ever even created?
Yeah.
right? The SEC was created in 1934, and it was coming off the heels of the 1929
Yeah,
stock
right.
disaster,
Right.
right? And in 1933 and 1934, a couple of legislations were passed that basically said, hey, shareholders actually have rights. They have the right to be informed of important things in companies they either may invest in or currently invest in. So coming out of those rules in 33 and 34, you had public companies had to report quarterly numbers, which they still do,
Yeah.
right? They had to report certain material events, right? The 8K form, right? They still do. They have to report if they're going to release more stock or do something like that. They have to release a whole bunch of other financials, right, for prospective investors. Okay, great. The whole there is investors have certain rights. They have the rights to be informed. Otherwise, what you get is you get a small group of people that have insider information, better information than the shareholder or prospective shareholder, and therefore they can make trades on that, and you get this market manipulation. Now, after these rulings were created, the SEC was formed to say, hey, not everybody is going to actually abide by these, so we need an institution
Yeah, I'm
that's
glad
going to
you
keep the
did.
rules
Yeah,
up and then go investigate and prosecute these things.
totally with you. Those are
Okay,
all
okay. So really it's about investor information, making sure they have
right.
the right information in a timely manner. Okay, that's fair and that's their right, right? If it's your money and your shares and all that. So when we talk about cyber issues,
Hmm.
and this one in particular, when I'm reading through the case, the 68 pages, it's, they make a couple of points saying, hey, there were these material issues, significant issues in their major products, and they didn't report them on time. And when they did report them on time, or did report them, they didn't give the entire picture, a picture that the shareholders should really know because they're entrusting this management, right, with their money, with their assets. And they're saying, hey, fraud, right? This is a deceit and it doesn't align with even our normal rules. Now we've got the new one that just hit, right? Just hit yesterday. You've got a 4-day rule. You have to use the same form everyone has to use anyway, right? The 8K form. But the 8K has been around forever, right? Since 34, when the rulings were created for fraud.
Mm.
So, okay, in my mind, you gave two examples. And, I love the Acme example because I'm a big fan of Wile E. Coyote. So, um, you've got one company, and if the management is providing accurate information on the SEC forms, the 1K, the 8K, or I'm sorry, the S1, the S8, and the 8K, which are your quarterly reports and all these other
Right.
things. If it's accurate, no matter what the information is, maybe it looks the company bad, maybe makes the company look good, doesn't matter. If it's accurate, they say you're following the rules. Everybody's got the same level of information, we're good. If, however, you don't, if you are deceitful in it, then you're actually breaking the law. It's PC 532 under the Uniform Penal Code. 532A, subsection A, specifically talks about officers in a company being deceitful or misleading in those SEC forms that are intended to inform investors. So I think that's really what it comes down to. I know there's a lot of talk about, well, wait, no, it's about whether they had certain security controls or not. No, it's about whether you were honest. Because that other company, if they file those forms and they're deceitful, even if they have the best security in the world, they're still breaking the law if they're being deceitful about it. So to me, it's not what their security posture was. It's whether they were honest in those SEC very formal, very long-standing forms that are intended to even the playing field with investors.
So again, I don't want to be deceitful. That's not a good thing.
Yeah, bad. That's a bad checkbox.
That's not reasonable. But let's take the example earlier between Acme and Consolidated.
Hmm.
So the presumption is that Consolidated doesn't have the same problem that Acme has, and I think that's wrong. I say 100% of companies, and that's what James Comey said, around
Uh-huh.
the FBI, said there's only two kinds of companies: ones that know they're getting hacked, or ones that are getting hacked and they don't realize it, and that's Consolidated. So
Sure.
The SEC is creating a perverse incentive for CISOs to automate the 8K process and just say, I'm always under attack. I'll give you an example. I made a joke one time when I was working in
Mhm.
telecom. You like this one? I thought it was a joke, and then I think the lawyers thought I was serious. But I said, hey,
Yeah.
I have an idea.
They don't have much of a sense of humor in the telecom
Why don't
industry.
we? I thought this was funny that they're taking it seriously. I said, why don't we, when we hire people, why don't we just tell them, hey, listen, we didn't lose your identity yet, but we probably will. So just sign here. And I'm just telling you now that I'm probably going to do something stupid later. I'm
It's
just
the
telling you.
stupidity clause. You want them to sign a stupidity clause that you understand that me as your employer, I'm stupid, and you recognize that.
So,
You missed your calling. You should have been an attorney. I would have hired you.
yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying that the sort of simple solution to the
Sure.
reporting exercise is simply go into workflow. And as your SOC generates problems and they mark them as potentially Sev 1 or something, start workflow, get it all reviewed. And if the
Mhm.
lawyers don't have the time, if it happens on a Thursday night and everybody's away for the weekend, then the workflow just goes right through to the SEC and says, look, in our SOC, we detected this problem. It could be
Ooh.
an issue. We didn't have 4 days to figure it out. So we're just telling you now that this could look serious. And if you're like a CISO and you're sick with the flu or something for 2 weeks, or you're away, or you've done a lot of traveling, I just think it's creating an incentive for people like me who automate everything to automate the process. And I think you would agree that in a weird sort of way, it makes me maybe not want my team sending texts around saying this could be bad, because that's what security teams do.
Yeah.
I've spent
Yep. You're
40
right.
years at this, and it's my job as the CISO to let my SOC team go, oh my God, this is horrible, the whole place falling apart. And then you go, wait a minute. No, it's not. And a week later, you realize, hey, this isn't such a big deal.
Right.
But in 4 days, I would have no choice but to go to the SEC and say, hey, listen, we're still hashing this out, but this could be bad. So I'm telling you now. And I think what's going to happen is that this will create volume. Now, maybe they want that. Maybe the idea is that you build like an SEC 8K SIM catcher. Like it'll be this sim that sits and all the 8Ks come in, and then they build a big dashboard. That'd be a cool thing. You and I should go, Pitt. We should start a company like sell the SEC.
We
By
could
the
have
way,
heat
that
maps. We could have all sorts of
really
metrics and cool
use
things.
AI and machine learning to go parse. I'm being silly now, but I
No,
think
no, no, no.
all I'm saying is you and I and everybody want good information. The problem is, here's where it comes down to for me, Matthew. I fundamentally believe, I've spent my life on this. I believe that cybersecurity resilience and achieving a high state of protection posture is still a research question. I don't think it's a matter of doing the risk management better, being organized better, doing this, doing that. I don't think CISOs right now know how to stop a nation state. So my advice has been, this is still research. We don't you could yell at me all you want. I can't do it better than I'm doing it now. So therefore, like for the SEC to say, we're going to put a hammer down, you got to tell us. I think that the right thing would be for 100% of the Fortune 500 to report every Friday that they've got material.
See, so I'm gonna challenge you on this because I think there is a healthy amount of tension in the system. The 8K is really designed to say that there is a material event, and let's delineate here,
But then
right?
4 days,
This
you don't
SEC
know
case has
that.
nothing to do with the 4-day requirement that just came into effect now. This is something that happened back in 2000. So 3 years ago, essentially. So there's a delineation, but let's stick with that because
Different world then, by the way. I mean,
I'm sorry,
different.
what?
It was a different world then with different
Oh,
expectations.
it absolutely was, and I think that should be taken into account in that space too. But it still has to be within the boundaries. And first, before I go into this about the healthy tension, we do have to recognize, our form of justice means Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. So I want to make sure no matter what you and I say here, we're not determining guilt. That's something for a judge or a jury in this particular
No, I
case. We can
understand.
talk about the things, but I am presuming that the people, SolarWinds and the CISO is innocent until proven in a court of law by a jury of their peers or a judge, right? That's just kind of the way it needs to be. But when it comes to filing that 8K, and I don't think there's going to be a flood of them, if and companies file them all the time, they tend to need to be timely, and they need to be something that is material, and there's materiality thresholds. Every big company has materiality thresholds, right? If you go to finance, they'll tell you what it is.
Yeah, but
um,
it's a funnel, Matthew. And like for example, in a larger company,
mhm.
there might be several hundred things per day that pop up that could be material.
Right, but they've got a process to deal with that,
But
because
not
even
in
before
four
the
days.
cyber rules,
I'm just
right?
saying it takes, look, I'm just saying that there's an awful lot of companies where you don't know inside 4 days, so I have to report it now.
Yeah, but we're talking about the SolarWinds one, right? Where there
Well, I
was
mean,
not
I'm
a
just
4-day requirement.
trying to generalize it because
Okay,
again, I'm
okay, well then
just
let's
saying for
generalize
people
it.
watching, the fear is, let's say you and I, let's say you're the CISO, I'm the deputy CISO for some bank. You and I are working
Okay.
together. And we're like watching you and I talk and we're thinking, oh boy, what's the deal here? I'm just saying the consequence of all this is that I understand that the SEC would like you and I, because we work for a public bank,
Mhm.
to make sure if there's something an investor should know, they should
Yes.
know. All I'm saying is that when it comes to cybersecurity, it's a different game because even if you and I think that we're fine right now, I'm telling you that we're not fine. And just a matter of
Yeah,
digging.
and I
Like, have
don't
you ever
disagree.
hired a pen tester that didn't find something
No, they
horrible?
always find something.
So why would I hire a pen tester then? I'd rather not know.
Because there are different thresholds, right? There are things that happen in an organization every single day that may cause pennies of issues, right?
I'm not
But
talking about the simple stuff. I'm talking
right,
about
we're talking about
controversial.
the major things.
And
And
those
the
are
way
happening
the
all
rule
the
is currently written is once you realize it is a material. So let's just take a real, an Acme example. If we go to finance an Acme company and go, hey, CFO, what's your materiality threshold that you have to file 8Ks? And they go, oh, well, for our company, size of revenue, it's a certain percentage, it's $1 million, right? If it's $1 million, I got to write an 8K. So if we lose a major client that was giving us $1 million in revenue, I got to write an 8K. Oh, okay, cool. I'm going to go back to cyber, and now I'm going to write out and say, okay, our threshold are impacts that we believe with a high degree of confidence it'll be 8K. Okay, so we've got so many customers, we think loss. All right, if we lose data for 20% of our customers, we believe that's a
Matthew,
million
who's the
threshold, right?
person that you're talking about? Who is this person who's saying, if we do this, we do, like, who's realizing this? Who in the company?
So the CFO has their numbers, right, of what because they have to file AKs all the
So
time.
this is the CFO realizing materiality?
CFO does have
CFO?
materiality, right? Because they have to work day
This
to
should
day.
be on the chief financial officer, not the CISO.
Right. But
It's not the way.
for the company, the materiality that's impacting to the stockholders,
Yeah.
right? The CFO understands because they've been in this role for a while, what is the materiality
And
threshold?
CFOs don't work, they're not real time. It's not a real time position. They could go 3 days to their daughter's wedding and not be available. What
Right.
happens if they're not available when there's a potentially material issue and I don't have the CFO available to help them?
No, you don't need to, right? This is a process, right? If you understand your company's materiality per the
Who's
CFO
you?
is $1
Who's
million
you?
of impact.
No, I'm just saying, who is
Right.
you? Like I work in a, let's go through an example. You
Okay.
work in SOC. Oh my God, there's S3 buckets open. Holy crap, there's customer data in there.
Yes.
This could be a disaster. You
Yes.
call the CISO, you don't know. You go, oh my gosh,
You activate your incident response team,
and let's
your
say a
incident
week later you're
commander.
still not sure. I'm saying
Right.
before then, I don't know. I haven't realized, but it might be bad, so I have to report, correct?
Mm-mm.
I
No.
don't have
So
to report if I'm not, I mean, if I'm pretty sure this is a problem, but then later on I realize
again,
I was
let's
wrong.
make it a clear process because that's part of what they're going to look for, right? If you're going to say no, I thought it wasn't materiality, they're going to ask, well, what's your process? Oh, well, I threw a dart. We've got a
All I'm
dartboard and a
saying,
material or
Matthew,
not
is
material. That's not
I
going to work.
I advise 120 companies, and I spent my life on this. This is complicated stuff, and
It is. And,
it's
for
trying to
Intel, I spent
simplify it.
24 years and I was their first incident commander. And so I
That
was
is
brought in
why
on
I think
every major issue that
that's why I
occurred.
think this is a research issue as opposed to.
Well, there were situations, right, where something is coming in and you think, okay, let's say it's a data breach. Okay, the tripwires have been fired. We know somebody inappropriately went into an area. We don't necessarily know if the data has been compromised, if the confidentiality or integrity, it could have been tampered with. We don't know yet. Okay, let's start doing our investigation. And one of the first things is, how important is that data? It's not important at all. You mean we could lose it all and it wouldn't be a material impact to the investors? Okay, I know I'm not going to be reporting to the investors. Oh, wait, this is the core code to Microsoft Windows or to Intel's chips. Okay, that's a little bit more important.
But
All right,
I'm saying,
now let's
Matthew,
go
that,
through. And the moment we realize, hey, that's now been exfiltrated out, that's when I'm sitting
and I'm
down.
saying 100% of companies are in that state right now for everything.
But you need to have proof, right, to say that it's actually occurring.
I'm saying I can just tell any investor, I'm probably really hosed up by a nation state. I'm pretty sure. Like if my
You
life depends
can.
on, like
And
you
if they
said,
ask
you
you,
work
well,
at
what's your
Intel,
evidence? Right? Are,
then
are you really
that's
sure? Or
how
is it
machine
just,
learning works.
it's
I
a
build a
general
model and I can predict that I'm probably hacked.
prediction is for the future? That's different. The 8K isn't about, I believe
I'm saying
something in
right
the
now.
future is going to happen. It's something has happened, you need to know. So it's not
Me,
predictive in nature. And it needs to be tangible. It needs to be something you can justify, especially if you're going to give bad news to your
and
investors.
here's what I mean. And by the way, you lay out a very reasonable point. Look, I'm also, I mean, I'm not a good investor, but I am an investor. I'm for the SEC doing this. You and I both want more security. We're all
Yes.
there.
Oh, yes, yes,
Yes,
yes.
I'm just saying that right now it's a question. It's sort of A or B. It's either this is something that the government can jump into and start driving good behavior, or it's premature for them. I feel like it's premature. I think you're more on the side of they should do something now.
I think they're late. Honestly, I think they're late, right?
But
These
here's
8K
here's
rules have been around forever. Why wasn't
but
cyber automatically embedded in them?
yeah, but here's the depressing part that I believe that I think freaks a lot of people out when I
Mhm.
say this. I really fundamentally believe that if we threw a dart at the Fortune 500 and hit some company, I would guarantee you that they have dozens of material weaknesses, serious breaches, and just a matter of going and looking. And the fact that
Right
they
there.
don't,
Wait, right there, right there. You just said going and looking. And let's go back to what the SEC is about. It's making sure everybody has the same level of information. So if a company does not know that they are breached, let's say China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, they all own them, right? But they don't know. Well, the executives and the investors had the same amount of information. There's no difference
well, I'm
there.
saying
But the
every company
moment
is
that
in
the
that state.
executives know, they need to share that.
But Matthew, you and I, if we're investing our money, just assume every company is hosed.
You
And I'm
can,
not
which
kidding.
may,
I'm not kidding.
make
And
you
it's a
only
please
invest
level the playing
in,
field. I know that sounds
commodities,
ridiculous, but
but
it's true. It's true. Like every single
it's true.
company is
But
hacked.
as an investor, the moment the executives know something significant that
And
I
don't
don't,
tell the executives.
don't tell the executives.
And then
So
they
the
never have to
CISO,
repeat
don't tell
anything.
anybody in the corporation
I'm
about issues.
just saying it creates a weird, perverse incentive to not tell the execs.
I think the incentive is the execs do want to know so they can get ahead of it.
No, because I mean, the instant they know by your, once they realize they got to go tell. So don't tell
Yeah,
me until you have it all worked
absolutely.
out.
Absolutely. If they're informed, I mean, you could get executives going, "Hey, don't send me any email at all. I don't want to know of any bad news." You could have executives, but they're probably not going to be in business very long.
I
They're
just,
not going to be adaptive to the industry. They're going to
yeah,
be
I
outcompeted.
don't agree with that. I think like you and I both, we have a lot of experience. We can think
Okay.
of cases, I know you can, where there's a bad thing happens A and a bad thing happens
Yep.
B, and they both have their life cycle. And one role unravels, the other unravels. Both of them can look just horrible, but one turns out to be nothing, one turns out to be a really
Yes.
terrible thing.
Yes.
And what
I
you're
don't disagree
saying
with you
is
there.
the SEC would say, well, don't tell me until you're really sure that it's this terrible thing. Then you got 4 days. And I'm saying I have control over that, and it creates a perverse incentive to not get to that point for a very long time.
I would say it creates a positive incentive for the organizations to drive their process procedures to be able to come to a determination faster, better, and more confident. And if not, then they have to, right? The disincentive is if I don't do that, I then have to report it, and that's going to go to my shareholders. That means
Here's
my
another,
price is
let me
going to go
give you
down.
another analogy. Let's say
Okay,
you and I are both human beings. And let's say a
let's
rule
go
gets
with
passed.
that. Yes,
We are. I mean, you never know. We could be simulations. But
you
let's
know.
say some government agency says, you need to report if you've got a serious health issue. And we
Okay.
go, and I decide the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to listen to my body and not go to the doctor. And if something really bad happens, then I guess I have no choice. But another person, maybe you would say, well, I'm going to hook myself up constantly here.
Hmm.
And every little thing that pops up, and there could be some bad things we both have. It might be a problem, might not be, but if it could be a problem, you're going to be reporting a lot more. You're going to be reporting more than me for sure.
Yes.
And I'm
Yes.
saying that's what I mean by volume.
And I get that, but we have to overlay that bigger picture because it's not just we want you to report if something's bad. We want you to be transparent the
Yeah.
moment or within 4 days
No, I
that
agree
you
with that.
know
I,
something is bad. Your investors know something is bad.
I'm not opposed
Okay.
to that, but I'm just saying that, look, I
You're
mean,
right.
you
It
get
could
the sense of my
flood. We
argument.
could make that database, right? And with all the graphics and everything, it could flood. But I think there is a
Yeah.
disincentive in that, and the incentive is get better at this. And that's
But
going to kick downstream issues to make, I think, cyber risk management have to get better. And I think there's going to have to be more investment in it in
geez,
order for it to get
I
better.
hope, I mean, I'm rooting for you to be right because you're telling a more positive story. I've got this depressing
Yeah, but who knows how this
it's gonna
crazy
be
world's
great.
going to end up? I mean, that's the thing.
Let's hope that I'm all wet and what you're saying is, and the SEC's activity does drive better goals because that would be you're describing a more positive and a more, I think, a future where we make more progress. And I'm describing one where, everything's already gone to hell in a handbasket.
Which, if you look at our industry, probably it's closer
I
towards
mean,
yours
there's
than the
elements
idealistic
of
viewpoint of where I want it to
So
go.
here's for people watching, I think the right thing here is that the correct approach here is, to do what's right.
Yeah.
There's a red face test that we all, we hold the mirror up. And I think, Matthew, what you're saying makes perfect sense. There are times when you realize that there is a big problem.
Yeah.
And the SEC saying, for God's sakes, when you hit that point, tell me, it's just, I'm not sure who the you is.
Well,
Like,
tell the investor. That's really what
what
the SEC
what
is
if
saying.
it
Tell
like
the
again,
investors.
what if it's the deputy CISO who realizes it, but can't find the CISO and is afraid to call the CFO? And then a
Well, I
week,
think there just has to be a process, right? Because
yeah,
people are going to be on vacation, there's coverage.
that's where
We're going to
you're
go through this
making a good
process. These
point.
5 people come into the room. We've got our different materiality. We say yes, we say no. We document the heck out of that conversation.
Let's
Otherwise, there may be a legal case in calling you out specifically as the CISO or deputy CISO, but you better document it
yeah,
and
if
show
they,
what process you used and in good faith
yeah,
when you think that, just don't lie, right? I
if
mean, that
the
would be the other
SEC is
thing. Don't
reasonable,
lie on the forms. If
yeah,
you
if
are
they're
filing one,
reasonable,
don't
I,
lie.
I think so. But I don't. Again, I don't think people are lying. I think that things can be screwed up for sure. But I'm not convinced that there's a lot of intentional. I'm not going to tell. But again, that's just my observation. I think.
Well, okay, so let's go back to the SolarWinds case and let's take a very specific example. And then I'm going to ask you 3 questions, right?
Sure.
If we look at the complaint and if you go to paragraph 14 through 17, and it basically says, and again, this is the claims of SEC. SEC still has burden of proof. They still have to prove this. So innocent until proven guilty. But paragraphs 14 through 17, basically it says that the SolarWinds and the CISO knew that there were three different customers in May 2020, in October 2020, and in December 2020, all that were attacked. Okay, and these companies came to them and said, hey, we were attacked by your product. Here's the issue. Now, in the December one, this was when Kevin Mandiant basically called them up on the phone, and this was FireEye going, and I knew their CISO at the time. They had grabbed the code and grabbed the binaries and reverse engineered it, actually went to Microsoft as well and helped reverse engineer it, and came back with definitive proof. SolarWinds, this is exactly the problem in your product. And at that point, they filed an 8K. And in that 8K, they said, as of December, we have an attack. They didn't mention the fact that they knew these attacks were going on with two other customers, one which was a government agency dating back 6 months. They didn't state any of that, right? And again, this form is to inform the shareholders, right? And so, and I'm thinking the shareholders would probably
worry about it informing the adversary as well.
No. So the requirement
doesn't bother you at all?
I'm sorry, what?
It doesn't bother you that when you're in the middle of a situation, you're telling the adversary exactly what you know?
Well, you're not telling them exactly what you know.
You're
telling them that I've detected you, and if they don't already know it by that point, you already have an advantage.
I'm just saying, I'm asking you, do you worry about the transparency on the defense?
Actually, I don't, because I think there's sane minds that say you don't have to give logs. You don't have to say exactly what you found. You don't have to give binaries. All you have to say is, hey, we were attacked in one of our major products 6 months ago.
Okay.
And, okay, because that's all the shareholders need to know. They're not security experts. They do want to know when their investment has been compromised in their primary product. That would be important, just as if their major manufacturing hub went down and was going to be down for 2 months. They should probably know that, right? Okay, so 3 questions in this situation.
Yikes, am I going to get graded on these?
You are. I've got a grading sheet over here. Right. Okay. That is if you're human. We haven't determined that yet. You could be a simulation.
I could be a deep fake here.
That's right. Okay, so if you were a CISO in this case, right, would you fill out that 8K form and choose to omit the fact that you knew, right, and your team knew that several customers dating back 6 months had actually been attacked? Would you have omitted that?
I would have never gone anywhere near the 8K because there isn't a CISO on the planet that even knows what the hell it is.
Okay, so I'm going to say you don't want to answer that.
Let me finish.
Okay.
If I had gone mucking around with 8Ks, I'd have been fired in 1 second as a CISO. That's what the lawyers do.
Okay, so if the lawyers say we have to file an 8K,
then let them figure out what to do. I don't know why you CISO here.
Well, you as a CISO, you are the top dog when it comes to cybersecurity.
In this case, this is not top dog. This is little O officer, not big O officer.
But you are the top representative in that organization, the top expert for cybersecurity. So
the lawyers have to determine how to fill out the 8K, not the CISO.
Okay, but would you allow it, right? Because you're a test.
They outrank you by so much it's not even funny. I'm just saying, you don't allow.
I don't know about that. I've had plenty of arguments with lawyers.
You're sitting there, your chief counsel. If you want to, fundamentally, if you want to be pissed at somebody, it's the CEO and the chief counsel that should be held accountable, not the CISO.
If the CISO, I mean, you're bringing the CISO to the big table for a reason.
When did the CISO get to the big table? Here, I'll give you an example. I sat and looked at the Fortune 500 and looked at the fancy pictures they put, like that posed picture with the CEO and the CEO. You know the one.
Oh,
There's no CISOs in there.
There's never a CISO in there.
No. They're not in the room. There's never happened. I've been on board of directors of Fortune 500 companies. I worked for a Fortune 10 company. There's no CISO that's at the table. The CISO's outside the room, brought in for 15 minutes, makes the delivery, gets kicked out, and then the real leadership team decides what to do.
And if, okay, so then let me turn that around. Let's say you as CISO,
Mhm.
right? Your company decides in this case, we're not going to, in the 8K we're going to file, we're not going to mention any of these other pertinent facts. Would you allow that to happen, or would you take
Well, then I'd
some
either
action?
whistleblow, then I'd have to
No,
be a
no, no, no,
whistle.
no, no. I'm not even saying whistleblow. Would you take an action as simple as sending an email to the attorney, to the CEO, and go, I don't, this is not correct. This is not in the
No, I'd
spirit of
be
what this
scared
is.
to
As
death
a
to do that
shareholder,
because
this is
that,
not accurate.
in most companies, that email would get you fired. Now, maybe the
Maybe.
SEC will change that. Maybe that's a good thing. But most CISOs would never send that. Never. You'd be fired in a sec. Who the hell is this guy telling me or gal telling me what to do? I would have never sent something like that. And I had a lot of stature. Now, if you're going to change that, then let's change it. That's why I call this a
And I think
research.
we do. I think we need to, right?
Okay, so that's what
Because,
I mean.
okay.
Research means change and innovation and coming up with new, not going back 5 years and saying this is how something should have been. If you're saying the CISO should be at the table and should make the claim, then let's do it. But there isn't a damn one of them that's there. Now, if you're saying, would I allow it to happen? The only legal process I have right now, if I don't want it to happen, is to go whistleblow. And I've been advising my clients to learn the whistleblower laws.
Yeah, whistleblowing, making sure you've got an ethics board, things of that sort.
Just,
But
and
whistleblow,
you can practice it. You can go to chief counsel and say, listen, it's my neck on the line, not yours. Here's what I'm going to do. If 4 days pass and I see you haven't, reported this thing, then I'm going to whistleblow. Here's how I'll do it. Here's the preloaded form. Here's the approach. I'm telling you now. And if you don't like it, fire me. Now I'm saying the minute you go tell a chief counsel you're going to go whistleblow, you've destroyed your career in 2023, 24. That
I
we
agree.
haven't changed the
I
culture
agree.
to the point where a lawyer would be comfortable with that. So you're asking people to go to their leadership and say, I'm going around you and I'm going to whistleblow if you do something wrong, which in
I
a
think there
sense
are
says
other alternatives.
report to me.
Okay.
I'm just saying that's where when I think it's premature because this hasn't been worked out yet. So you're putting the CISO in an impossible
I don't
situation.
agree. So I've been in similar situations, and I won't get
You would
into the
go
details.
when you were at Intel, you'd have gone around your CEO and lead counsel
I'm
and
not
it's
going to give particular details, but let's talk hypothetically, as vocal as I am. So, in a situation where the attorneys or even a senior executive wants a certain statement to go out that is factually incorrect, having to do with my ownership of cybersecurity,
Mhm.
the answer comes back, right? Is I then communicate to them in email, right, and say the following information is incorrect, or I am not behind this. I am not assuming this risk. If you want to make these statements, fully knowing that I'm telling you that they're incorrect, that is your choice.
But I'm saying you tell
But
your
I'm
boss
keeping
that.
this, right?
Tell
But
your
you need to
boss
own
that.
that,
You
right?
tell your
And
boss that.
huh?
You
I've
tell your
told my
boss.
boss that. I've told my
I'm saying
boss's
that's
boss
okay,
that.
but your boss is probably not the CFO, and your boss may or may not. So the boss should be the one who decides, not the CISO, because
No, that's
most
fine.
CISOs report to a CIO or
But
CTO or something.
but
So that's
once they
the person.
realize you are not that scapegoat, right?
Yeah,
That they have to own it, even though they're being told. Then
yeah.
it's not the SEC against SolarWinds and the CISO, it's SEC, SolarWinds, and whatever that executive name is. Because there's going to be that email that says, hey, the CISO told you that was false and you decided to file that report anyway? You signed off on it? Right? That's where it's going to go. It comes back to transparency and accountability.
That's where it should go. I
I
agree
agree.
with you there. But I
Okay.
think we're together. But I'm just saying that right now, as we go into 2024, there isn't a damn CISO that has that situation in a comfortable state. It's a mess. And now this SEC is putting the CISO in an impossible situation.
I think they're putting them in an uncomfortable situation. I will agree. I don't think it's impossible because I think we can get better and better and better over time.
So you're
I think
saying
there
you
is
got
a
to go
small
challenge
number
your
of
boss's
CISOs.
boss. And if I've got 3 kids in college and I need the money, I don't want to go I've got to go to the legal counsel and say, that's wrong. You listen to me. What you said is wrong. That's an impossible situation.
It's not
And by the way,
impossible. It's ethical, by the
the
way.
CISO could be wrong, by the way, because that's the problem. Most
Yeah,
of the time in my career, as things unfold, they become clearer a month, 6 months, a year, even 2 years later. So you're afraid to say that's wrong because you're not sure. You know how this works. This is
understood.
very,
But if you know it's factually incorrect,
but
or
how do
if
you
you
know
know
it's
the
doing?
statement
Like, I might be
is
right.
intentionally misleading, right, is
Yeah,
insufficient to inform, then you got to step up. I mean, come on. We
I
should
got,
be ethical. We should be at the top of the ethical pile in organizations. There should
yeah.
be no question
I
about
no,
our trust and
I'm for
ethics.
that. No, I'm for that. I
So,
agree.
if we're saying,
I mean,
well, you
you
got kids
agree
in college
though.
and whatever, then you shouldn't be a CISO. If you're not willing to step up and do and make the hard decisions, you don't deserve a seat at the big table
So
anymore.
I've had two CISO roles. One was little
Mhm.
o, one was big O. CISO little o means CISO, but you're not an officer. No, you don't
Yeah.
speak for the corporation. You know what that means, a legal
Oh, yeah.
definition of officer. And I've had that. But I also had CISO where you are an officer. They're
Yes.
very different, very
Oh,
different.
agreed.
So that's the
Agreed.
first problem, that when we refer to a chief information security officer, there's two different states of that. And I don't think people understand that. There's a very big difference, and it's not nuanced, it's significant, the difference between an
True.
officer with a corporation and not. So that's right off the bat a problem. And then the second thing is, if you take everything the SEC's done and just put the word CEO in for CISO, then I have a lot less problem with it.
Fair enough. To the first part
Why
of your
not
point,
just
whether you're a big O
say
or a little O,
like, wouldn't that make more sense to you? If you're going to go after somebody, hey, the freaking CEO is
well,
the one who should decide. What am I missing?
okay, well, let's take that. But first, whether you're a big O or a little O, ethics still apply.
No, I
And
agree.
if you know there is a lie, if you know that there is a massive omission that leads to deception, you got to step up. It doesn't matter whether you're big O or little O, you should
What
step up.
does step
Ethics
up
apply. So
mean?
that's one.
What does step up mean?
Step up
Tell my
means you
boss.
need to
I tell
then
my
be
boss.
very vocal, right? Like we talked about, right? Let them know, hey, I am informing you that I know that this is materially false, that this is
Matthew, this is
factually
not the way
false, or
American
I'm informing
don't,
you.
corporations don't work by incenting executives to be vocal, jump up and down and scream and yell. That's not how businesses work. You inform your
No,
boss.
no, no, you don't. You should be professional about this. And I
Inform
have
your
been, and I've
boss, and
gotten
then
great
that's it.
results from that.
Once you've informed your
But
boss,
it's not a threat. It's I'm informing you. What you just said was materially false, and you did so on a federal form.
so why
So
not
if
make
I
the
ever get called to
CEO?
court,
Why wouldn't the
I'm gonna let
CEO
them
be?
know I informed you on this date and time. You're
I
gonna
know.
have to answer to that,
No,
right? So, hey, I'm here for the company, but I'm duly informing you because maybe you
no.
didn't know.
I mean, in
And I am
broad
the
sense,
expert.
you and I are
I'm
very
here to
much in
help.
agreement on the transparency. No, those are all
Okay,
reasonable. But I
okay.
think we're both in agreement that the CEO is kind of, this seems a little weird that it's not that. Don't you think?
Well, and you bring up a good point, right? You bring up a good point. But here's the example that I think about. If on your quarterly reports, right, your S1 reports, your quarterly reports, somebody is fudging the numbers, right, and saying, putting in fake revenue numbers, right, inflating the value of the company, who are you going to hold accountable? Who
Well,
is the number one expert that
the
should know those numbers?
CEO is the
It's
final
the
readout.
CFO.
No,
It's
but
the CFO.
but the CEO is where the buck stops with that sort of
I
thing.
agree. I agree. But if you were going to look at the CFO, and from an investigatory perspective, if the CFO was lying to the CEO, right, then you're going to hold the CFO accountable, right? Because they don't have the plausible deniability. Oh, I don't know anything about finance. What do I know about revenue? I don't know. No, you're the CFO. Guess what? You have a fiduciary responsibility. You are the top dog, right? Now, if the CFO and the CEO collude, okay, then you have a collusion case. Sure.
Matthew, let's back up here a minute.
Okay.
So, is there any system that a CEO would not have access to in his or her own
Oh,
company?
tons. In a lot
They
of the
would have
companies I
access,
run, I don't
they
let
would
the
have access to
CEO
everything.
have access to systems. They're
The
dangerous.
CEO can have access to everything.
They can have access to the information that they ask for. Yes. And
Everything.
typically
So if the
they
CFO is
create
doing,
structures,
to use
right?
your example, if the
Yeah.
CFO is reading this stuff and then concluding A when it's really B, the CEO could have read it but chose not to.
True. True. But you
Why not
need to
hold the
then go,
CEO?
okay, who's
The
accountable
CEO
here?
has got to make sure that you have a leadership team you trust. And if there's somebody there lying, it's on you, not on them. That's
No,
my
not
moral
necessarily.
belief.
Fraud can be an individual actor, right? If somebody is an embezzler in their company, you don't also charge the CEO, right? The embezzler is somebody who created the actions and went forth and created theft or fraud, right? So yeah, maybe from an
Yes, I mean, look,
organizational
I
ownership
understand
perspective,
it.
but not from a criminal prosecution.
I get that, like a four-star general might have somebody down four
Yeah.
ranks down who does something awful. You don't blame the general. I get that. That makes good sense. But
Okay.
I think that my point is that if we really do believe that the CISO has posture and status and should be doing it, then let's make those changes. Let's get them to
I agree.
train. Let's start making changes. That's what I mean when I say this is a research issue.
Okay, so then because I agree with you on that. I think the
Yeah,
CISO, they should be at the big table,
I'm
number one.
for all of that,
They
but I
need to be
don't think that,
competent, ethical. We need to
yeah,
make sure that they're empowered as well, right? Because that makes things go smoothly. If they're not empowered, it's rough waters. They still need
yeah,
to
I
be ethical.
understand. They need to
But
get training, but they don't get like
I agree. I agree. Okay, so
I
we
went to
agree
business,
on that. How
so
do
I
you
did.
think this case will change that? Or do you think this
Yeah,
case
I think it will.
will change it?
No,
How?
again,
How?
I'm because like for what we're doing right now, you and I wouldn't be having this discussion. So I love
Yep.
that. I think that people will talk about them. It gets the discussion going. The CISO does move a little closer to the executive room. The board realizes, hey, I better figure out who the hell my CISO is.
And if
So,
they're any good.
so for to think that I'm all for that. I'm
Okay.
just, if you had to boil my whole thing down to one little nub, it would be this, that I think there's a lot of work to be done before we start holding people accountable and calling them liars. I think there's just a lot of
Ugh.
change that needs to be done before we get to that point. Because there's a lot of, like, for example, I have been involved in the preparation of materials that go out to investors. I've been a board member of a large company. There's last minute changes
Yes.
all the time, that a CISO would have no clue is being made. So are you saying the CISO needs to have final readout on anything that goes out the minute before it goes out? I need to read it in case you say something wrong?
Honestly, I think if it has anything to do with cybersecurity or claims or issues or impacts or risks, yeah, I think the
Then I'll
CISO,
put,
that's
then
part of their
that's what
freaking job.
Dude, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes, I agree.
That process is not in place for any company on the planet. So do it. If you're for that, then fine. Then let's figure out how to do that. So what does that mean? That's what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a whole lot of stuff here that you better go change, fix, improve before we start going in a courtroom and having issue. Let's fix all these. So I'm for, you and I are probably way more in agreement than disagreement.
Oh, yes, yes,
I think
absolutely
that
so.
the
It's the
nuance
nuances,
simply,
though, right?
the nuance is, should they be aggressive now, or is there still a lot of stuff we better work out before you start going after individuals? I'm more on the latter case. I
I
think
and see, more on the former. And so
it's
again,
okay.
part of my background, and I've been in security 35 years now, and the first part of it was actually doing internal investigations for theft, fraud, embezzlement, collusion, all those
I've
kinds of
done that
things.
work too.
So, when I was dealing with an insider and I knew that they knew that what they were doing was wrong, right? Whether it was fraud, whether it was straight out theft, whatever it was, right? They knew it. I'm like, prosecute. I mean, let's go. I'm going to build the case so we can take it to prosecution. And every single one we did, I had a great team. My manager, she was awesome.
Matthew, you
You
know
know,
that there are a lot of cases where somebody is accused of fraud and they didn't do it, or they were innocent, or they were confused. It's
and
not that.
and and it, right now, innocent until proven guilty. The
You're
burden of proof is
describing the
on the
cases
SEC.
after the fact, the ones that in your mind are your canonical examples of escort this person out. But if you go back and think, there were hundreds of others that were really unclear and may have turned out that it was not fraud.
But we have to rely on the justice system. It's not up to me or
And I'm
you. It's
for
up
that.
to a
Again,
jury of
I'm
peers
just
or a
saying that in
judge.
this case, and in the context of the CISO, I just fundamentally believe that there's still a hell of a lot of work that needs to be done.
I don't disagree with you. Again,
So let's go
we're in
do it.
agreement on 90%. It's that fringe. As soon as I realized
Yeah, I think
somebody
you're right.
knew and was an active party in that deceit, especially to shareholders, especially on SEC forms. This wasn't on a cocktail napkin. This was on freaking SEC forms that are going to the investors, right? These are quarterly reports as well. Wait a second. You do need to take a step back and go, all right, that really isn't truthful. I hope I'm going to get away with this. Okay, guess what? You're now deficient of the ethics necessary for the position, and the SEC should come after you, right? You are undermining that trust of the shareholders who have rights. They have rights to know. So, you got to come after it. And I see your point. Yes, it should come after SolarWinds, and the CEO really should be that name right there. And maybe it should be. I think that the CISO should also be held accountable, though. I would not be opposed if they also put the CEO there and chief legal and whoever else knew at the time. I would be happy, right? Actually, I love collusion cases, by the way. I love it. It's a felony in of itself, right? So,
If I get a parking ticket, you're my attorney.
don't get a parking ticket. How about that? That's my advice. But
No,
I do
I
think,
enjoyed the discussion very much. By the way, thanks for inviting me.
yeah, this is great. And I think you're right. I think having
A lot
discussions
of
like
fun.
this help. So constructive discussions, different viewpoints. Thank you so much for having this. And you're the CEO, Tag Infosphere. You guys have one of the best newsletters out there. How can viewers get a hold of you, get signed up for the newsletter? What's the best way?
If they come to our website, it's perfectly fine. They can sign up and they can read our materials.
Awesome. I will be sure to put that in the link in the description there. So, and thank everyone for watching. Be sure to subscribe and catch all the Cybersecurity Vault episodes where we chat with industry leaders to dive into, well, fun and juicy, right? The most relevant and interesting cybersecurity challenges, perspectives, and best practices. We'll see you next time. Thanks.